Welcome back, everyone, to our podcast, Lend Me Your Ear. It's the podcast about all things EAR. I'm sitting here with Katharine Geiss. She's our elementary and ECC principal. And we're going to talk today about a program that I think is sometimes perhaps undervalued. We talk about educating the whole child, and one absolutely critical area of teaching and learning is social and emotional learning, and what we call SEL. And what it is, it's teaching kids. Well, I'm gonna let Katharine talk about what it is, but it's really critical. And when you think about the teaching and learning, the academics that we care about, emphasize, report on, all those things, it's so much harder for kids to do that kind of learning if they're also not growing in terms of their social capacities and their sort of emotional lives behind the scenes. So, Katharine, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
SEL, social and emotional learning.
Yes.
Tell me, what is that, and what is it? Why do we do it?
Okay. Well, social emotional learning is it's basically like a content that we provide our students to talk about and to teach them things such as self-awareness, self-management, empathy. Why do we do it? We do it because we'd been doing it for years and years, but it really did come to kind of a crescendo, if you will, during the pandemic. One of the things that we really needed to do when we were in the pandemic and during the pandemic was do check-ins and make sure that we were all doing well, especially our students, but also as an administrator, it was for me to also check in with my teachers and the staff too, because it was affecting all of us. When we were slowly coming out of the pandemic, the conversation continued, and thankfully it continued worldwide as far as how important it was to continue the conversation of how are you doing, what do you need, what are the things that I can do to support you. And from that came this kind of idea of what we really need to do is make sure that students are socially and emotionally sound as they go through school. And by doing that, we've then created, in the United States, they're called CASEL competencies that many states have adopted. And what they are, certain areas of our emotions and our socialization that we need to ensure students are proficient in, or at least attempting, while they go through school.
So what are the CASEL competencies?
This CASEL competencies are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, responsible decision making. Okay. And the thing that I like to kind of always poke in there is empathy building. Granted, now a lot of these are umbrellas, and underneath them you'll find exercises that do build empathy, but I also think it's really important that we have empathy at the forefront of our conversations.
Talk to me about that empathy. What does that do for a school? Why do you need? Let's talk about schools first, and then we can talk about the world. Sure. Why do we need students who have empathy? Why does that matter?
It matters because when students can empathize and see what other students or other people are going through, they're less likely to bully or tease or be mean to, because they can identify those actions will hurt, rather than this is just somebody who's different from me and so I can pick on them. So it truly does deepen us as humans, and it really does need to start at the education at the school level.
So empathy, and I like to think of empathy because I was a middle and high school English teacher for many years, and one of my favorite books to teach was To Kill a Mockingbird, and talk about walking in someone else's shoes. Empathy is really that practice of seeing what we have in common and appreciating that the other person in any relationship has so much in common with us, and we can feel what they feel, and we can understand how they feel in a particular situation because we would feel that way too, and understanding those shared emotions is really what it comes down to.
Absolutely.
So moving past school, like how does empathy play a role in kind of like our adult lives
in the world and
Yeah.
us as adults? When we have deep empathy skills, we can then create systems that actually help students or help people around us, and not just perhaps selfishly look at things. And this could be in business, as how do we ensure that our businesses are maybe sustainable, or our businesses are helpful to the employees that work there, and think about them as well, but also think about our effects in the world. When we can think about our effects in the world because of how we feel about it, then we're more likely to do things that is a little more conscious and conscientious of the things around us.
Yeah, I mean, the EAR mission statement talks about
Right.
global citizenship.
Right.
And really, I think empathy is at the core of
Absolutely.
citizenship. It's whether it's, being a good citizen is being a good citizen with your neighbor,
Absolutely.
being a good citizen in your community, being a good citizen in your city, in your country, and then a good citizen of the world. You're understanding the things that you have in common with the other person, whether that person is sitting right next to you or whether
Absolutely.
that person is halfway around the world. That we all have this human core that we share, and understanding that commonality helps us to make deeper connections and to be more responsive
Absolutely.
to one another.
Absolutely. And so when you go back to the castle competencies of self-awareness, self-management, all of that comes to if I'm aware of myself, then I'm aware of those around me. And that's where kind of like empathy is built into that. Self-management, knowing how I act within a group, within it myself, within just a quiet room, also creates, or there's empathy built into that. So, and all of the competencies has that.
So let's talk about, I mean, we work on this all the way throughout. We're working on this
Yeah.
in high school, we work on
Yep.
this in middle school. Last week, 2
Absolutely.
weeks ago, I had Fernanda, who's our secondary principal, come in, and we were talking about bullying specifically. And of course, empathy and SEL have a lot to do with like
So much.
bullying prevention.
Absolutely.
But let's talk about like how do you build these skills? I mean, it seems like just something, I think, and one of the reasons that many years ago there wasn't a lot of SEL
Yeah.
around is because you kind of think, well, either you are or you aren't.
Right.
But what we have come to understand over time is that actually they're skills that you can build.
Absolutely.
So how do you build those skills?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to kind of just emphasize that too, that in the past we did just kind of like, as educators, we might look at students as, oh, you're one way or the other way, and then I'm not here to be your parent. And I think that was a common theme in the past. And now we're not thinking about ourselves as parents, but thinking of ourselves as helping and creating, or help developing our whole child. So you're asking what it looks like in the elementary level. For us, we start it with our morning meetings. Morning meetings are designed, they come from a framework called the Responsive Classroom, which we subscribe to. And we have had teachers go to trainings. They are now our trainers, and they have trained us pretty substantially. And it's definitely around morning meetings and afternoon closing meetings. We call them closing meetings.
Okay.
And so this is the first year that we, from K to 5, are doing morning meetings. We do morning meetings in ECC too, but they have a little bit of a difference. But they definitely still have some self-awareness built in. They have self-advocacy, some relationship skills, those kinds of things.
So morning meeting, first thing in the morning?
First thing in the morning, students come in and they get into a circle on the carpet. And they have a lesson that has been created by our psychologists that have to do with a specific competency. And so the first semester we worked on self-awareness. We're working on self-management and social skills, social awareness right now. And what that is that it's a lesson that may not feel like a lesson. It's really just talking. It's a chance for students to go to sit down and look at the learning lesson of the day and talk about it. Before that, though, many teachers do have a chance to say, "Okay, let's say hello to each other," and that simple act. And a lot of this feels very simple, almost too simple. Where I think that's where a lot of people that you were saying at the beginning kind of question its validity, but it's really quite powerful. You have everyone stand up, or some teachers have everyone stand up, give each other a high five, say hello, and they need to say it to everybody in the room, so everybody has a chance to say hello to everybody. Or some teachers have each other just kind of say hello to their neighbors, and it moves into a circle that way. But it gives a chance for everybody to say hello, or at least just connect with somebody that they may not always connect with.
Okay.
Okay.
So then what? So you have the greeting,
Mm-hmm.
and then can you give me an example of a kind of activity that you might do in a particular grade level?
Sure, absolutely. So an activity that I might walk into would be, well, a good example, and we're talking about it right now, is bullying. And so, what we might have on the board is a scenario. So, what's happening, and here's the scenario. In the older grades, you'll often see students role playing that scenario so
Okay.
that they can kind of talk through it and talk about how did that make you feel. Ask those empathy building questions. Really identify with the student who might have been the bully and might have been the person who was bullied, to talk about how did that make them feel, what would you do differently, but also what is the group around doing it. I think a lot of times, I'm going on a tangent here, a lot of times when we talk about empathy building or we talk about helping students, we often focus on maybe that one student who's the bully or that one student who might be the victim, when truly we need to be developing the entire classroom. It's not just the two, it's the entire classroom to either not put up with the behavior, call the behavior out, or do something about it so that the behavior goes away. And that's what these meetings do. They train our students, they help our students with tools, understand how to be upstanders, understand how to be like little citizens of the classroom.
So you get a couple of kids who probably aren't the ones involved in whatever situation is happening, during recess or after school or whatever. You put them, they'll act out a scene that's written on the board, and then the teacher will go around the room and ask different kids to give their
take on
their take on it.
Their take on it. And I wouldn't necessarily say the students who are acting out are not the ones involved. Sometimes they are the ones involved.
Sure.
And so that they can truly see, and maybe they're switched roles and they don't know it.
Right.
So that they can kind of have that hopeful aha moment.
But
yes.
in going around the room, then you're sort of getting everyone to register, like, this is what it would feel like to be this person. This is what it would feel like to be the other person.
Correct.
If I were the other person, how could I act differently in order to get a different outcome? How would that change the way the victim feels?
That's exactly what I'm talking about when we're talking about developing the upstanders or the bystanders, so that they can all identify what it would be like to be the bully, what it would like to be the one who is bullied, what it was like to be the one watching, because that's important too.
And all of this is basically what we're doing is taking things that happen inside our heads and often happen sort of without articulating them. It's just feelings that are happening in our heads, and we're articulating them. We're putting them out on the table. We're describing them, and which gives everyone else in the room the ability to then cognitively wrestle with them and come and draw some very logical and real conclusions about it.
That's the beauty of this situation, is that it feels very subtle and it feels very simple, but it's actually quite deep, because it does get to that cognitive level, because it does put words to feelings, and that we know that elementary students don't always have the words to their feelings, and so it verbalizes what they're feeling. It also identifies it so that everybody can understand that, I'm feeling the same way you are, or hey, I have the same reaction you do. And so it also creates that collective experience, which is absolutely essential when we're building a social emotional environment.
So then, so you've got the greeting, and then you've got
This kind of lesson that goes on.
lesson that goes on that
Correct.
takes 5 or 10 minutes.
It takes usually 10 minutes.
10
I mean,
minutes?
we want to give it its due. We want to make sure it's identified. So we don't want to rush it.
Should we pause for a second?
Okay.
Keep going.
Okay. We don't want to that is quite loud. What's that?
É mesmo? Ah, tá bom.
Okay.
He said it's kind of cool because it
okay.
makes it sound like we're in
Because it's school. Okay, all right. So I forgot what I was saying, but I was saying that
We're talking about it's
lesson.
5 or 10 minutes. You were saying
Sure.
it's like 10 minutes.
We want to give it the time that it's due. We want it, and that's also the change from the pandemic to now is that we are carving out time for this lesson, for this sit down. We can talk about this with children, which we hadn't done prior to the pandemic. So yes, 10 minutes maybe conversation. We want to make sure that students have kind of a little bit of what was the
So you've got the greeting, and then you've got this
kind of lesson that goes on.
lesson that goes on
Correct.
that takes 5 or 10 minutes.
It takes usually 10 minutes.
10
I mean,
minutes?
we want to give it its due. We want to make sure it's identified. So we don't want to rush it.
Should we pause for a second?
Okay.
Keep going.
Okay. We don't want to that is quite loud. What's that?
É mesmo? Ah, tá bom.
Okay.
He said it's kind of cool because it makes it sound like we're in
Because it's
school.
school. Okay, all right. So I forgot what I was saying, but I was saying that
We're talking about it's
lesson.
5 or 10 minutes. You were saying it's
Sure.
like 10 minutes.
We want to give it the time that it's due. We want it, and that's also the change from the pandemic to now is that we are carving out time for this lesson, for this sit down. We can talk about this with children, which we hadn't done prior to the pandemic. So yes, 10 minutes maybe conversation. We want to make sure that students have kind of a little bit of what was the learning target, and did the students learn the skill, whether it be a small skill or a large skill. But from there, what we want to do is kind of take that learning point and have that be our lesson for the day. So the closing part of that morning meeting has to do with, now what are you going to do? Now what's your day going to look like? How are you going to implement this learning target or what we've talked about? Where might you do it? Why don't you talk to your neighbor and tell me where you might do it? And they might say, during break time, when I play soccer, in PE, at lunch, in the canteen. A number of ways, oftentimes outside of the classroom, but sometimes they'll say inside the classroom. The cool part of the closing, which is at the end of the day, is the chance for the teacher to come back and go, so how did we do? So that the students can verbalize it, which again works on that cognition of doing and then saying what I've done. That helps the students understand how important these skills are. But they also start internalizing it because they have that closing meeting too. So both of them are really important.
Well, I expect that it also becomes, because you're doing these things every morning and it becomes a routine, it's also substance that the teacher can then refer back to, especially if we're engaging in issues that are developmentally and age appropriate and are contemporary, like they're happening in the classrooms, that's why we're doing them, then it becomes a touch point that the teacher can use to remind kids, remember what you said it felt like if you're in this situation.
And it actually does, and I hear it all the time. Do you remember when we talked about it last Monday? And yes, they will use that as a touch point all the time.
That's really cool.
It is.
And so, and just to kind of bring this back around full circle, I think really important to emphasize that nobody can learn in an environment that feels unsafe.
Absolutely.
And that ultimately when we're equipping kids with empathy, when we're equipping them with self-regulation and all of these other tools and strategies, what we're doing is we're making sure that they are ready to learn, that they're in a emotional space
Absolutely.
where they can fully give themselves to the learning that's actually happening in the classroom.
So more specifically, what you're saying is that we're giving them an opportunity to be vulnerable. We're giving them that option to say, this is a safe space. I can say these things. I've just said them. I've just told you how I'm feeling about A, B, and C, and no one laughed at me. No one said anything silly. I'm now feeling safer. And so now this environment has become a safe space for all of the students and the teacher to have that conversation, or to go to a safe area in the room in order to discuss or process what's been going on.
And when you think about those sort of management strategies later in the day, this SEL work that we're doing in morning meetings also plays into that.
It not only plays it, drives it. It absolutely drives it, because again, now we have vocabulary that the kids can use. Now we have a starting point, that learning target that we talked about in the morning, or the past learning targets. The teacher can absolutely use the same conversation. Everyone's using the same language. Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's probably a little bit hard for you to talk about differences that you've seen, because this is your first year at EAR.
Sure.
What are you hearing from teachers in terms of how this work is affecting their classrooms?
I would say there are some teachers who would not know what to do with themselves if we took it away, which is not happening. We're not taking it away.
Right.
But I think that it is such a part of what they do and a part of their daily conversation with students that they would probably find another way to put it into their language. So having said that, what I'm saying is starting to get woven, and this is the first year that all classes are doing morning meetings. As I understand it, being the new person on the block, it was a kind of a pilot program last year. There were a few teachers who did it. Not everybody did it. Not everyone is doing closing meetings just yet, but we are having some more people, and more are doing it. Again, because this is all kind of just rolling out. But now that we're K-5 doing it with lessons that were created, I think that the conversation is, to be honest, I'm not sure there would even be a conversation, because it's such a part of our fabric now. And so I don't think they would know how to even have the conversation. They are saying that it is that they're hearing vocabulary that's super important. And I think that's one thing. We're still new, so I think the shift in the culture, which is ultimately what we want to see with SEL, is slowly happening. It's going to be slow. That's another thing that we have to also give ourselves patience for.
Culture's a big ship. Takes a long time to turn it.
Exactly. And we just have to be patient with it, because it really is a machine. It's a large thing.
But we're seeing differences.
I think we're seeing differences, and I'm definitely seeing differences in how I can talk to kids and how Mr. Leahy, my psych, talks to kids, in that I can refer to that language and they kind of snap into it. And they're like, yeah, you're right. Okay. And then they can kind of talk with me through it.
That's great.
It is. It's really nice.
And I think, and just to kind of wrap things up, we talk a lot about educating the whole student.
Right.
We talk a lot about wanting to educate, not just so that they become great academic people, but so they become great people.
Absolutely.
And being great people means you have a deep sense of self.
Absolutely.
And a deep ethical sense that drives your decisions far beyond just like the skills of writing and reading and math and those things, but really being and going back to that idea of really being a productive world citizen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you're wrapping things up, but I think the next step that we're going, if you don't mind
No,
me
please.
talking a little bit, is we do have this set aside, but SEL also lives within content levels. So it lives in math, it lives in science and social
Hmm.
studies and reading. And so now it's kind of shifting that planning into and making sure that we incorporate SEL into and embed into other content levels. And so for that, I'm talking about like building in collaborative moments, building in opportunities for students to make mistakes and know that it's okay to make mistakes. So we have math norms, and in those math norms, we say it's okay to make mistakes. We talk about being vulnerable with math. When you and I were in school, math was not something that was looked favorably upon. People were scared of it, right? And I have to say that sometimes it's still that case now.
Mm.
And I'm doing what I can to dispel it, but we've got to make sure that kids can make mistakes. That's SEL. That's super important. And so it's more um, of in that sense, it's about helping develop the student who is also confident.
Hmm.
And that's the big thing, knowing that they have the ability and the skills to conquer the world, be a global citizen.
Awesome.
Okay.
Catherine, thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
It's been great having you here. We'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. Have a wonderful May.